Hello everyone. Allow me to begin by introducing myself. My name is Seishi Morikawa. I am Japanese and living in Japan. I was born in Hiroshima in 1954. When I was 4 months old, I moved to the metropolitan area of Tokyo. My father, who was also born in Hiroshima, was exposed to the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. He was working at NHK, Hiroshima Central Broadcasting Station of Japan Broadcasting Corporation, which was only 1 kilometer or 0.6 miles away from ground zero. Most of the people in that area died immediately or within a few days, not only because of heat rays or the blast, but also because of exposure to initial radiation. Many who at first appeared uninjured developed disorders and died days or months later due to acute radiation sickness. But my father miraculously survived and lived until 95 years old. 95 years old, though he suffered from a lot of illnesses. Given that, I believe that my life is a miracle of miracles. So I'm a second generation of the atomic bomb survivor. In December 2018, I published a book titled Toward a Nuclear-Free Future, Message from a second-generation atomic bomb victim. This is it. It discusses my life, health challenges, clinical history, and characteristics of the symptoms. After publication, many second-generation victims have sent sympathetic messages my way. 400,000 to 500,000 second-generation survivors may live in Japan. However, up until now, there were no books, literature, or documents in which the reality of the life and experiences had been written in detail by and about them. Today, I would like to talk about the reality of the second-generation A-bomb survivors, and I would like you to know what the effect of nuclear weapons has been on humanity. First of all, to make sure, please let me define the second-generation A-bomb survivors. The second-generation A-bomb survivors means the people born after the atomic bombing to parents who are either both or one of which were exposed to atomic bombing. So they are distinguished from in utero survivors. Before talking about the issues of second-generation A-bomb survivors, I would like to briefly tell you the 3 characteristics of the damaging effects of atomic bombs. These are: first, heat rays; second, blast; third, radiation. It probably includes hereditary effects. When the atomic bomb detonated above Hiroshima, a ball of fire appeared mid-air with a central temperature of several million degrees Celsius. This ball of fire swelled to 200 meters in radius a mere second later and continued to glow for about 10 seconds. The heat rays emitted by the fireball increased the ground surface temperature below to a scorching 3,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius. Within a 600-meter radius from the hypocenter, roof tiles began to bubble. Within a 1.8 to 2 kilometer radius from ground zero, clothing, both on people and hanging on clotheslines, caught fire. Within a 2.5 kilometer radius from ground zero, such roof burst into flames. The air pressure around the center of explosion reached several hundred thousand atmospheric pressure, causing the surrounding air to rapidly expand. This triggered a shock wave, or a wave of pressurized air, followed by a devastating blast. The speed of the blast reached 280 meters per second at 100 meters from ground zero. Once the blast had waned, the air at the center of the explosion thinned out, causing yet another powerful backdraft. Within a 2-kilometer radius from the hypocenter, the windows of every wooden building were blown away, and the building interiors caught on fire. Consequently, nuclear radiation penetrated deep into the human body, damaging cells, causing changes in the blood, inhibiting blood-producing functions, and thus ravaging inner organs. The initial radiation emitted within a minute after the explosion inflicted fatal damage on those who were within a 1-kilometer radius of ground zero, most of whom died within a few days. Those who survived the first few days also passed away after some time due to radiation sickness. The residual radiation also afflicted those who entered the bombed area of Hiroshima or Nagasaki to look for their family members or colleagues, or to assist in rescue operations. By late 1945, when acute radiation disorders were allegedly under control, it is estimated that the death tolls in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were 140,000 and 74,000 respectively. Nuclear radiation continued to inflict long-term damage and still threatens the health and livelihoods of the atomic bomb victims and their families to this day. By 1946, there were reported cases of misshapen keloids appearing on the victim's skin after their burns had healed. Mental disabilities and microtherapy accompanied by physical underdevelopment were observed among those who were exposed to the radiation as fetuses. Moreover, 5 to 6 years after the exposure, around 1950, leukemia rates increased among the bomb victims. By 1955, there was also an increase in cancer such as thyroid, breast, and lung cancer. Atomic bomb emitted massive amounts of radiation. It exposed the reproductive cells and organs of the A-bomb survivors, which could be the cause of the genetic and hereditary effects of the second generations. Anybody cells, except the reproductive or germ cells, are called somatic cells. One of the definitive traits of the nuclear disaster is that it causes pain and suffering across multiple generations. As a second generation of the atomic bomb survivor, I have felt this time and time again. Sickly from a young age, I spent my days in and out of the hospital due to bouts of high fever and gastrointestinal diseases. In addition, minor scratches and cuts took a long time to heal and often became infected, one of many symptoms that left doctors perplexed were marked down as cause unknown or undiagnosable. At the age of 33, I was fortunate to meet a lifelong partner and blessed with my wife's pregnancy 2 years after our marriage. Still, no matter how much time went by, the fetus in my wife's womb never developed. As the result, the baby was unable to enter this world as a fully formed individual. I barely held back tears when I learned the news. On the one hand, there are healthy second-generation survivors. However, there are a substantial number of us who are sickly like me, those that pass away from serious diseases such as cancer, leukemia, and cardiovascular diseases, and unborn second and third generation victims who never even entered to see this world. Many second generation bomb victims are facing the following problems and cancers. First, they are concerned about their parents' health and the welfare of first generation bomb victims at large. Second, they are also concerned about their own health and how possible illness may impact their livelihood. The illnesses and symptoms common among second-generation bomb survivors are diverse, unique for each victim, and are not limited to typical radiation illnesses such as leukemia, thyroid cancer, multiple myeloma, and other types of cancers. Instead, problems range from digestive disorders, heart diseases, respiratory problems, nosebleeds, and asthma, abnormal leukocyte counts, and small wounds that are difficult to heal and fester easily. Third, second-generation bomb victims face social prejudice and discrimination. Some have experienced marriage or employment discrimination when they were younger. Even after marrying and having children, they may be concerned about the health of their children and worried about the discrimination they may be subject to as third-generation bomb victims. In addition, when their children marry, they are concerned about the health of their grandchildren, who will be fourth-generation bomb victims. Nuclear radiation, in fact, is an increasingly ubiquitous threat that is already spreading around the globe, exemplified by first, nuclear weapons tests, second, radiation exposure via working in uranium mines, which is required for the operation of nuclear power stations used for plutonium extraction, a necessary resource for nuclear weapons production. Third, radiation exposure via working in nuclear power stations And fourth, radiation exposure via nuclear power plant accidents, which afflict residents in the area. Furthermore, subsequent generations are already feeling the damaging impact of nuclear radiation. Indeed, Japan is not the only country that has ever experienced nuclear disaster. Hiroshima is not the first ever atomic bomb site, and Nagasaki is no longer the world's last atomic bomb site. On July 1945, the first atomic bomb test was conducted in Alamogordo in the United States, implicating local soldiers taking part in the experiment. Even in regards to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, at least 10% of the victims were of Korean, Chinese, or peoples from other parts of Asia and Western countries were victimized. In addition, the nuclear testing at the Marshall Islands also implicated many local inhabitants, many who have died or suffered from radiation sickness ever since. Despite all of this, over 2,300 nuclear tests have been conducted so far around the world, and the effects can be seen globally. Similarly, nuclear arms production necessitates nuclear reactor facilities and nuclear fission processes, of which plutonium is a byproduct. This is why nuclear power plants exist. Nuclear accidents, including 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima, have afflicted or even killed many people through radiation sickness. Indeed, nuclear arms production and uranium extraction are heavily reliant on human labor, which has been largely filled by indigenous people or the underprivileged local population, and cannot be sustained without inflicting more harm on laborers and local communities. So, nuclear weapons are damaging the people of nuclear-having nations through the process of production, even if they are not being used as arms. The dismantled weapons need adequate facilities for their temporary storage and eventually permanent disposal. Environmental ways to their permanently dispose of the nuclear weapons is non-existent. Each of these experiences and the knowledge have strengthened my conviction. The hereditary effects of radiation are irrefutable. We, the descendants of atomic bomb victims, are living proof. It is clear that nukes such as nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants, nuclear submarines, ships, carriers, and humanity cannot coexist. It is therefore of utmost urgency to abolish nuclear weapons and remove the previously mentioned nuclear power from this planet. The first step we must take toward this goal is the ratification and enforcement of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons adopted in the United Nations in 2017. As of March 20th, 2020, 36 countries have ratified it. However, for the treaty to come into effect, at least 50 countries must ratify it. As a second-generation bomb victim and a global citizen, I ardently hope that many countries, including Japan and the United States, neither of which participated in the treaty negotiations, will ratify the treaty immediately, putting the Nuclear Weapons Prohibition Treaty into effect and paving the way for nuclear abolition. Moreover, every victim of nuclear radiation, regardless of whether their exposure was a result of nuclear weapons, nuclear tests, uranium mining, working at nuclear power stations, or accidents at nuclear power plants, along with their descendants, should be entitled to receive medical and welfare support to guarantee their right to a comfortable life. We simply cannot realize a society where nuclear victims are properly looked after through compensation, treatment, and support without abolishing nuclear weapons and nuclear power. The human rights of victims and nuclear abolition are two sides of the same coin. We cannot discuss one without the other. Thank you for your listening, and see you later.